What's up guys, and welcome to my channel. My name is Cello the Fashion Fairy. So due to popular demand, I'm going to show you guys how I derive my basic block. So from this top line, I measured 17 inches. I measured 1 inch away from the edge of this paper, and I would call that my point O. So this is where I'll be deriving my vertical measurements from. So my shoulder to my waist is 17 inches, which I marked. So the width of this is my bust divided by 2 plus 2 inches. So I divided the bust measurement I'm working with by 2, and then I added 2 inches to this, and the 2 inches made it 19 inches. So I measured 19 inches as the width of this box. So the next step is to divide this box equally. Remember, I said we'll be deriving our front and back blocks from this. So whatever I got from the division, I also marked on the top line in order for me to equally divide this. Now that I've done this, this would be my front block and this will be my back block. So work with me guys, it's pretty easy. So remember, you have to work with the measurements that you have. So essentially I'll just wipe this out so that my book, or rather my pattern paper, wouldn't look so messy. So the back waist is usually shorter than the front waist, and from the measurement I made earlier of my client, hers was 2 inches shorter than her front length. So you would want to measure your own back length to derive your own measurements. This is not a standard. So later on, I'll be showing you how to make sure the sides align perfectly. So for the neckline, I'll be using a width of 3 inches, and I'll also be using a width of 3 inches for the back. So for the back depth, I'm going to be using 1 inch, and for the front, I'm going to be using 3 inches. So the shoulder length I'm working with is 15 inches, and I divided that by 2 and I got 7.5 inches. That was what I marked at this point. So I also measured from the center front back, and I marked 7.5 inches as I did on the front pattern. So for the shoulder slope, I'll be marking 1 inch here. So I measured 1 inch here, and I also measured 1 inch for the back. So also it's worthy to mention that for the front as well, you can take 1.5 inches for your shoulder slope. This depends actually on the style line that you're making. So if you're making something that you still take out dart from, especially on the armhole, if you're making princess dart, you can use 1 inch. But if you're just making a regular bodice, I would advise that you use 1.5 inches. So that was why I adjusted this, so I could show you that you can use it to also achieve a perfect, very perfect bodice. It's actually very perfect once you do it. So try this and let me know guys. So using my curve, I just traced out the front neckline, and I'm also going to do the same for the back. Next step is to determine where our chest line would be. To derive this, we'll be doing our bust divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches. So this is me getting my phone to actually do the calculation. So you do your full bust measurement divided by 6, and you are going to add 1.5 inches to it. So I'm going to also show you where you will measure this from. So because I used 1.5 inches, I'm going to be deriving my measurement, placing it on 1/2 inch above the shoulder slope. So I wouldn't be placing it on the shoulder slope. I'll be placing it a 1/2 inch above it because I marked 1.5 inches. But if you used 1 inch as your shoulder slope, you really don't need this. So this is me measuring across board so that I'll make sure I have a straight line. So I measured from the top line and I marked this measurement across board just to get a straight line. So in order not to confuse you, if this is a bit hard for you, you can use the back shoulder slope instead. So when you do your bust divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches, you can use your back slope to measure it from that slope and you get it, and you get this line instead. So this new line now becomes our chest line. In order to make sure you have a perfect line, you can go ahead and measure your shoulder measurement on this chest line just to make sure you have a perfect straight line running into your shoulder slope. So having sorted this out, we're going to be deriving our vertical measurements. But before we do that, I'm going to be needing the bust point to bust point measurement. This is also known as apex to apex or nipple to nipple. So for her, it's 7 inches. I divided this by 2 and I marked what I had, which was 3.5 inches. I left that alone for now. I'll still get back to it and show you what to do with it. So to get my bust point, I measured from the shoulder. Her shoulder to bust point is 10 inches, and this was exactly what I measured. So this line now becomes my bust line. Remember that measurement I made earlier, the 3.5 inches? This is what you're also going to be placing at this point, and this will serve as a guide for us to draft our darts. So marking 1 inch below that bust point line, make sure it's 1 inch below it. Just mark a straight line all the way to the waistline, and this will now serve as our middle dart leg. So we'll be sharing our darts equally on both sides of this line. So because I want to be adapting this into something else, I used 1 inch on both sides. So 1 inch on either one side and 1 inch on the other side. If you are using this just as a normal basic bodice, I advise that you use 1/2 inch on both sides. Going over to the armhole, we are going to be constructing our armhole curve. So to do this, I'm still marking 1/2 inch above that shoulder slope to get the midpoint of this line. So once I do that and I've gotten it, I'm going to also be marking it from that top line to determine where exactly it will be, and I'll also measure this on my back. Using a straight line, I will connect both points. This is just for guide. So this is what it looks like now. So on that mark I just made, I'll be marking 3/4 inches inwards on the front, and on the back I'll be marking 1/2 inch in. Now, on our chest line, I'm going to be doing the bust measurement divided by 4, and whatever figure I get, I'm going to be placing that measurement on this line. I'm also going to be adding 1/2 inch of ease to this measurement. Going in again, I wanted to make sure I had the accurate measurement, which I did. So going in with my curve, I'm going to be connecting the tip of that shoulder slope to the 3/4 inch mark and also to the bust measurement, which I placed on the chest line. So for the back, I'm going to also be doing marking the exact measurements I marked for the front at the back as well. And this is where the measurement stopped, and I'm going to also be connecting the 3 points, the shoulder slope, the 1/2 inch mark inwards, plus the bust measurement divided by 4 plus 1/2 inch. And this has become our armhole curve. Next is to mark our waist measurement divided by 4. Bearing in mind that what we used for our dart was 2 inches, 1 inch on either side of the dart, I'll also be putting this into consideration by adding this back to my waist measurement. Using a straight ruler, I'll be connecting from my waist all the way to my chest line where I marked my bust measurement. Now, for us to make sure that the two sides align properly, that's the front bodice and the back bodice, we're going to be creating a dart. And this dart is the difference between the shoulder to waist measurement for the front and the shoulder to waist measurement for the back. For my client, this was 2.5 inches. So I measured it by the side from that bust point line downwards, measured 2.5 inches, and connected this all the way to the bust point. The bust point, remember, it was 3.5 inches, it was 7 inches, and 3 divided by 2 was 3.5 inches. So for the back tightening, I like to do full back tightening, and what I normally do is to mark 1 inch away from the center back, and I'm going to be connecting this all the way up. In order to know where exactly the back tightening will stop, you can use that measurement that we made earlier to contour the armhole as a guide. So I marked 4 inches from my center back, and this would serve as the middle part of my dart. So for me to know exactly where the dart would stop, I used broken lines to extend the chest line. I then drew a straight line all the way from my waist to that line there, and I marked 1/2 inch on both sides of this line, and I'm going to be drafting out my dart, making sure that it touches that line 1 inch below. For the back waist, I'm also going to be dividing my waist measurement divided by 4 plus 1 inch of that. And I'll be measuring this from my 1 inch of back tightening. So you measure from that point and you measure your waist divided by 4 plus 1 inch dart measurement. I'll be connecting this to my bust measurement. So guys, this is the end of this video, and I hope you found this very helpful. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up, and I want to see you in my next tutorial. Bye.